Alrighty, so my book was Atonement by McEwen. It's really like the title that I came up with is called Attaining Atonement. Really it's about this girl, Brioni, who basically tells a lie because she's trying to protect her sister. But because of that, she's forced to spend the rest of her life unraveling this lie and trying to make up for it. And so she drops so many things, like her dreams of going to the university. She has to leave her family, all in order to make up for this one thing. These are the two covers that I found. The black and gray one is the one that I had, and then there was a movie made in 2007, I believe, and that's the new cover that came out after that, so I just put them both up there. So before I guess we start talking about the themes of the actual novel, I just wanted to give a really quick summary of it. So it begins in the upper class English home in 1935, a few years just before World War II. And this family, the Tallis family, is expecting their two cousins and three cousins, a set of twins, and a girl who they're coming over, and they're coming because their parents are getting divorced. Brioni is busy making a play for her brother, who's also coming to visit, and his friend. This family seems to be very occupied with their own lives. They don't really seem to pay attention to each other. For example, the mother is always having a migraine, and she stays in her room most of the time. The father is off working all the time. He's never really home. Cecilia is back from college, and she's just kind of wandering around, not really paying attention to anyone, getting on her mother's nerves. And so in the middle of all this, Robbie Turner, who is the help from before, has come back home, and he actually falls in love with Cecilia. And Brioni actually sees them flirting, and she takes it the wrong way. She sees them in the library, and then there's a point in time where Cecilia jumps into the fountain to save a vase in her underwear, and she thinks Robbie is looking at her in the wrong way, and things like that. And so when the two twins come and they run away, they send out search parties, and she sees a man raping her cousin Lola, and she immediately assumes that it is Robbie Turner who did this. And so when the police come, she tells them that it's Robbie, and Robbie, without any kind of trial or without being able to explain himself, is thrown into prison, and then he's forced to go fight into the war to make up for his sin, I guess you could say. So things really go out of control, and so that's where the book stops for a second, and then it fast forwards to World War II, and we hear about Robbie, and Brioni goes to be a nurse for the soldiers, and she's trying to find her sister. Her sister Cecilia is so angry at her family that they threw Robbie in prison, so she just leaves and tries to go does her own thing. And she finds Cecilia and she finds Robbie. In the story, she finds them and reunites them, and she makes a public apology to everyone. But then it fast forwards again to when Brioni is really old, and we find out that this whole story was really just her book, and that in reality Robbie and Cecilia never found each other, and that they both died in war by themselves. And so her atonement is really her making up this story so that they might live together immortally. And again, this whole thing kind of starts with a fabrication of sorts, and then it ends again with the same kind of a made-up story, but that's how she atones herself for all that she's done. So some of the major themes include the coming of age. That is a big one. Everyone, like Lola, is trying to, she's doing all her makeup and perfume, and Brioni is writing these long, sophisticated plays, and Cecilia is just waiting for something to happen, and Robbie wants to go to medical school. All these things, they're all they really want to grow up and get into the real world, and they're all like trying to make that thing happen faster. But when they get there, they realize that there's so many sad things about it, and that there are huge consequences for your actions when you become an adult. And that's what I think that McEwen is really trying to tell us, especially younger people who read his stories, is that you really have to be careful about rushing the process, because when you get to that point in time, you become more responsible for your actions. Because of one small lie, Brioni is forced for the rest of her life to just try to get her sister and her lover back together. She can't go get an education, things like that. Her whole family breaks up, her parents get divorced. Her house eventually turns into a hotel. It's really not that great. So he's trying to tell us, be careful really what you wish for, and be aware of what your actions could result in. Compassion and forgiveness are another thing. Brioni did wrong by imagining that Robbie raped her cousin, and then she fictionalizes a novel to really, again, make up for that. She writes at the end, there's this long letter from Brioni to Robbie, and we're not really sure if that ever gets to him, because in the story we think it does. We think that he reads it, but then at the end you realize that Robbie actually died in war, so we don't really know that for sure. Dreams, hopes, and plans. They talk a lot about Cecilia fighting her mother to go to the university, and that's a big deal for her. Cecilia and Brioni's dad pays for him to go to school, and then he's about to go to medical school before the whole fiasco happens. And so it's really about pursuing dreams and hopes and plans. And war is presented in this novel as a really, war is always presented as an ugly thing, but this is really a hopeless war. It's almost as if nothing is happening, it's just violence all the time. You never hear any good positive things about it. And so that's why it's kind of symbolic of the time that Brioni is going through in her life. It's really chaotic, and she's not really getting anything accomplished. And then family is another big one. The author really stresses the importance of family, but in the end, this family actually breaks up. And that's, again, because of their lack of ability to communicate with one another. Everybody's in their own little world. Nobody really wants to stop and think about what the other person wants. And so because of that, they're all kind of scattered. By the end of the novel, nobody's with anybody anymore. And again, the significance of the title, like I said before, she has to atone for her sin. And she makes up a lie to atone for her sister being abused, is what she thinks. And then she has to, in order to atone for that, she has to make up another story. So that's the significance of the title. And the picture down there, right there is, these are all from the movie. And so that's a picture of her as an older person telling her story.